Hello and welcome back to The Hatch. I'm Sammy Roth.
And I'm Rosie Murphy. This is the podcast where we talk about Lost.
This week we're watching Born to Run. It's a Kate episode, and unbelievably, it is the last one before Exodus Part 1, the finale.
We've also got an interview with lead cinematographer Michael Bonvillain, which offers a fresh perspective on some of the stuff we've been talking about all season.
Yeah, so let's get into it.
As always, we start off the show with our hot takes. You know what this is by now. Sammy, what's your hot take?
So my hot take is I thought it was really interesting, the scene where Saeed brings Jack out to meet Locke at the hatch. I just thought it was so interesting that Saeed desperately did not want to open the hatch and, thought it was super dangerous and, was afraid of what was inside. And, meanwhile, Jack and Locke, who normally are enemies and not on the same page, we're actually totally in agreement here, if maybe for different reasons, that, yeah, we should open this thing. So I just thought that was interesting in the context of all the conversations we've had about, would Saeed have made a different or a better foil to Locke, or whose camp does Saeed fall in, Jack's or Locke's? I just thought it was interesting here to see, Jack and Locke sort of in agreement, and Saeed very rationally, I thought, sort of surprising that nobody else has had this reaction of saying, well, gee, maybe there's a reason there's no handle. Maybe there's a reason this thing isn't supposed to be opened. I hadn't thought about that at all, and I thought it was pretty smart that Saeed brought that up.
No, it is. And I think one of the things that is so compelling about Saeed is that he doesn't fall neatly into either camp. And neither do Sawyer or Kate or Jin or Sun or many of the other leads. But Saeed from the beginning doesn't take sides and is... I don't know if he sees himself as just as much of a leader as Jack has become and as Locke sees himself as being, but I don't know, he kind of assumes that mantle just because of who he is, I think.
He does, and I mean, he's definitely thinking about the whole group here and trying to protect everyone, right? I mean, he sees
definitely.
Jack and Locke is going off and doing this, this kind of dangerous and risky thing, and he's trying to step in and saying, no, step back, we've got to think about this, and I respect that.
Agreed.
So what is your hot take?
So remember many months ago when we read Javier Grillo-Marxuach's essay, and he disclosed that there was once a theory that Walt was a powerful psychic?
Oh yes, of course.
Gosh, there is so much of that in this episode, right?
Oh my God.
There is that great scene where Walt grabs Locke's hand and he says, "Don't open it, Mr. Locke, don't open it." And you know exactly what he's talking about, even though he clearly doesn't, and it's clearly a supernatural event. And then at the end of the episode, when he admits to Michael that he burned Raph, and he says, "No, we have to go." Despite Michael showing, a really, really nice moment and saying, "No, man, we can stay if that's what would make you happy." No, we have to go. As if he knows something's coming, or, there's some supernatural force guiding him. Like, damn, it would have been great if that original idea could have been brought to fruition, because boy, we really see all those seeds planted.
So this episode, by the way, I was kind of prepared to be disappointed, because the last three episodes were, very, exciting, high-octane, episodes that I really remembered and knew were good episodes. So I was kind of expecting to be, this one to be sort of a letdown, but I thought it totally wasn't. I was really into this.
Okay, tell me more about that.
I just, I don't know, I thought the flashback was really, really compelling.
Okay.
And just the sort of tragedy of it, and the, both tragedy and mystery, where you still don't know what Kate does, what Kate really did the whole time, and that kind of, underlays everything. But meanwhile, you've got just this sort of, heartbreaking story about the, sort of childhood love that she has, and, trying to recapture some of this life that she's lost. And then, of course, Tom ultimately getting killed at the end. I just, I was really into that story, and I liked a lot how it, really contrasted with Kate on the island this episode, where she ultimately has this, really devious scheme, and nobody trusts her, and you kind of sympathize with her because you see, what's going on in her past, but also you totally understand why it is that in this episode nobody on the island trusts her, and that turns out to be sort of the right call by all of them. So
Yeah.
I really like the
Yeah.
contrast of those two things a lot.
I mean, so I see what you mean in terms of who, like, where the viewer feels sympathetic towards Kate and where they don't. But I think, I mean, no one in her past trusts her either, right? Like, we see very clearly that her own mother doesn't trust her and indeed is afraid of her. That when she's dying, she calls for help instead of having a conversation with her daughter. Tom, I think, is reluctant to trust her, and she sort of has to win him over. And is won over pretty easily, but he definitely is dubious when she sneaks into the backseat of his car, right? Like, I don't think they're that different. I think the difference is, so far on the island, Kate has been trusted, because most people still don't know that she was the marshal's prisoner, right?
Right,
And
as Hurley reminds us to
right,
hilarious effect.
poor Hurley. But many people on the island do trust her and do look to her as either a leader or kind of a through line to Jack. And unfortunately, when Sawyer spills the beans there on the beach, that's all shattered for her, which is a different kind of loss. But I don't know. I get the impression that Kate was kind of enjoying that feeling
Enjoying which feeling?
of being trusted for once.
Yeah. No, you're right, and I totally, which is why she's so sort of broken at the end when Sawyer,
Yeah.
reveals that. But I think in the flashback, you're right to say that people may not trust her, but I still, to me, the flashback was. I just thought there was such a powerful sense, throughout her scenes with Tom, especially, that there was this, this life that she once had that she wishes she could go back to, and obviously she can't, and we don't know why that is. But it gave me a lot of sympathy for her, and at the end, I had totally forgotten until like the scene when she starts running out of the hospital that Tom was going to get killed here,
Oh, really?
and yeah, and then I remembered as she was fleeing the hospital, like, oh yeah, shit, he's going to die now, and I just the moment where she's urging him to get out of the car and he won't get out of the car, I don't know, it really was heartbreaking for me after seeing those scenes between them. So for me to watch that, and then it made me really want to sympathize with her more on the island, even when you sort of know that, ultimately she is deceiving everyone here, and ultimately she does give them a pretty big reason not to trust her. So to me, it was difficult for that reason.
I think you bring up a good point about how easy it is to empathize with Kate, despite knowing that she committed, what's built up to be a really horrible crime, and like maybe built up to be something bigger and more terrifying than it actually is. I'm looking forward to getting to what Kate did and finding out if it feels anticlimactic or not, because they really lay it on thick here, right? Like, she's wanted, she was pursued by the U.S. Marshals, she was sort of a cold-hearted robber and not a cold-hearted killer, but a killer in this episode, at least by association. But you're right, she is shown to us time and time again, like in all of the episodes that don't have her flashbacks and in those that do, that she is frankly worth trusting.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably a lot of credit should go to Evangeline Lilly for that, for like playing this character who's committed this big crime and who tries to poison Michael this episode, and we still want to sympathize with and trust her. Like, she carries that
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah. So my question coming away from this episode was, like, there's a lot of symbolism associated with that little toy plane, right? It was a major plot point in a previous episode. It's a major plot point in this one. Like, is that plane special to her only because of who Tom was, and it represents, some time before with a capital B? Or is it sort of representative of the sum of all her crimes or whatever. Like we joke sometimes that we talk about Lost as if this is a high school English class and it's a text, but like what does the plane represent?
That's interesting. I guess I hadn't thought about it as representing more than Tom specifically. So I'm curious about your theory here about it representing the sum of her crimes.
Well, because I got to thinking about like what does Kate regret, and I think we see that she regrets a lot, right? Like she regrets her clearly very fraught relationship with her mom enough that she wants to go see her and, if not repair things, at least let her know that she loves her, and clearly takes a big risk by going there. She asks in the first episode with the marshal whether that farmer that she stayed with who turned her in got his $23,000.
Oh yeah.
Like you're right, there are a lot of like very human and very sympathetic moments that involve her, and like I think a big part of that is that she's not as cold-hearted as her pursuers believe her to be, right? And like with that has to come some measure of regret because she sort of left a lot of hurt people in her wake, right? And my memory's not quite fresh enough to like give you a list and a full accounting right now, but I think we'll discover more and more of that as we go on.
Yeah. Well, I think now you're making me think about this. Maybe the plane more than Tom specifically, and I sort of was getting into this earlier, but maybe it represents more of the life not lived for Kate. One of the things that I had really forgotten watching this episode, or that I hadn't really internalized, was that Kate had this, actually like had a life with significant things happening in it before the crime, that there would be something that she would regret not having anymore.
Yeah.
Because, all you see of Kate from the beginning and in almost every flashback is, Kate the criminal, Kate on the run. And so it's just really sort of a reality check, or sort of a punch to the gut here to remember that, oh yeah, before all this she was a person who had dreams and aspirations, and that's totally gone for her now, and her life has just been totally defined by the crime and running away from it.
Right.
So I gotta think the plane has something to do with that.
Right.
I mean, the plane was from this, idyllic childhood moment with the time capsule. I mean, my gosh, it's literally a time capsule.
Yeah.
To a time that she can't get back.
Right. And you're right, it is about more than Tom, right? It's about, would she have married this kid who she made a cassette tape with when they were 13? Like, probably not, right? But it represents all of these other things that could have been, and the normalcy that could have been.
She could have had a life that was normal.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
Yep. I feel like we're at a good point to ask what's different in hindsight.
You're right. We have not been doing our explicit hindsight segment in the same way the last few weeks.
Well, actually, I have a pretty official one here, or a formal one at least.
Actually, so do I. You go first.
Which is when Michael says to Walt, Walt's asking like, "We're going to come back for the others, right? When we get found," and Michael says, "Yeah, of course, but it might be a bit hard to find the island again." Which, indeed, it is. Again, not sure. We don't know what was in the writers' heads at that precise moment, but like, those are some prescient words from Michael.
Maybe Michael is a psychic.
Perhaps.
Runs in
I
the
don't
family.
think so.
No.
But
no, you're totally right.
No, I just thought
yeah.
That made me stop and say, "Oh," which is all I have to say.
Yep. My hindsight is just that I remembered. I didn't remember this until the scene where Kate was, like talking to her mother in the hospital. But I then remembered in that moment, as her mother started to yell, "Help, help," that ultimately what happens when Kate gets off the island is that she goes to trial for her crime, and she gets off the hook mostly, or at least partly, because her mother decides not to testify against her.
I had totally forgotten about that
Yeah, so
until
had I,
right
and I had
now.
to like look it up to be sure, but like that's what happens.
You're right.
And it's really powerful watching this scene and realizing that ultimately her mother is sort of gonna forgive her.
You're right. Or close enough.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Should we get to the interview?
we should. So, Sammy, you spoke with Michael Bonvillain. Who was he?
Yes, and I think it's pronounced Bonvillain.
Bonvillain.
He had to say it to me a couple times, and I'm still not sure if I'm getting it right. But yeah, good guy. He was the director of photography on Lost. He worked on a lot of the great moments of the show, like the raft launch scene that we have coming up. He was responsible for the look of that scene. So yeah, it's be an interesting conversation.
Let's go.
I'm here with Michael Bonvillain. He was the one of the directors of photography for the first two seasons of Lost. Michael, thanks very much for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Sammy.
Yeah, so to get started, could you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with the show?
Well, I had been working for J.J. Abrams quite a bit. Did Felicity, I did Alias, and I was actually in Thailand doing a really silly movie called Sniper 3 when I got a call from Sarah Kaplan saying, hey, J.J. wants you to do this pilot. And I was like, yeah, cool, man. I'll be done in 2 weeks. She's like, no, like now. It's happening now. And I was like, I didn't want to bail, so I said I'm not available. And anyway, so Larry Fong shot the pilot and did like an amazing job. And then he and I alternated the first half of the season or something. I think he did a few episodes and then split. And I worked on it for 2 years, so that was my connection was JJ.
Oh man! So I've got to ask, do you ever regret not having shot the pilot?
Only every single day.
You're right. It's an amazing. Obviously, they did a good job with it, regardless. But that's interesting. Do you think you could just explain for me and for our listeners, what it is that you do as a cinematographer and as on Lost specifically as director of photography, sort of what your role was on an individual episode basis?
Oh, sure. As a director of photography, I'm responsible for the lighting and the camera work. So, I help, with the director and operator. We choose lenses. It's all very interactive. So I don't do any of it myself. Like the lighting, I would say I have the most control over, but is also dictated by a lot of other things. Great show for a lot of reasons. Not the least is the writing and the cast and all that. It was a really fun show to work on. But we also did, it was like the jungle, which is a lot of it's just sort of damage control. Like, okay, it's raining in the morning, it's sunny at 10 in the morning, it's overcast, it's sunny again, it's raining again in the afternoon, and the whole time it's supposed to be one single continuous, look. So there was a lot of just damage control, and I had a really good key grip named Chuck Smallwood who helped out a lot, just sort of maintaining, whatever look we decided to go with. Like, we're going to go with sunny. Okay, well, and then I had Jim Gertch was my gaffer on most of that, and he was great. So, and then we also had we had the flashbacks, which were, usually, more contemporary interior, kind of like more controlled things, or this Korea or, an operating room or whatever it was. And so, it was a really nice balance between just like, duking it out with it, in nature and doing something a little bit more conventional.
Did you have any favorite locations to film at, like the hatch or the beach or the caves or, anything that, either was fun to work on or, a challenge that you enjoyed?
So we shot on Oahu, and the North Shore was was where the beach was, where they lived, and that was our sort of main location, their camp. And there's an interesting part of Oahu, which is, I guess it's Koreatown. I can't remember what it's called, but it's this like 1930s like 3-story buildings with the shops below and the apartments above that gave us a lot of flexibility to shoot sort of the flashbacks. So it was always it was always fun. Like, I mean, we would shoot in the North Shore. Most of the people on this crew surfed, so it was just fucking awesome. we would like, it was like Apocalypse Now, they would, the assistants would pull up at lunch with on the gators with our boards, already tied down. We would jump in and we would like just go to the point and we would surf, and then somebody would honk, after like 45 minutes we'd come in. And, there were enough people that didn't surf, they could set up the first shot, right? And then we'd get back and have a sandwich, and all the cuts on our feet fixed. But so it was always great to be on the North Shore because, it was just so beautiful. And there were so many times we just stopped and there were whales, like, just out there, like, doing their thing. And, I mean, a TV show is expensive, man. Like, every hour of a TV show, I don't know what it costs, like, whatever, $90,000 or $660 or, $100,000, I don't know. But we would just stand there for 15 minutes and look at this and just go, wow, and that's the kind of beauty of that show, is that, we were in an amazing place and we knew it and we took advantage of it. And, but after a while, like the jungle, like you do get tired of it, man. You're like, fuck, this is so hard. Like, I'm just trying to, make it look like something, you know what I mean? Like, if you're shooting in the jungle at night, and it's very difficult, more difficult for the crew than me, obviously, because I'm like pointing and eating chicken fingers, and they're, they're hanging, big equipment, up in the trees and stuff. But yeah, it was. I mean, it was a really, really fantastic time, and all those locations, like after 2 years, they did get old, and it was a network show, and they wanted their fucking close-ups, and I was like, okay, well, we're in Hawaii and we're shooting close-ups, and that's enough for me,
Yeah,
like
that's why you got out.
Yeah, I wanted to, I think it's a Cloverfield right after that. I was like, I don't want to be in Hawaii shooting a close-up of somebody that, just because that's the network ideal or whatever.
And you didn't need to do the hike through the jungle scene for the 100th time, I guess.
Well, no, the hike through the jungles, those were kind of cool. Like, even in this episode, there were like some really cool, and the music, again, it just gives it that uplifting, like,
right.
That score is like so good. It was fun I've never worked on like what do you call it, like a water cooler show. I mean, Alias was popular or whatever, but it wasn't like, Breaking Bad or Game of Thrones or whatever. And Lost was one of the first like big shows that people were like, holy shit, like what, you couldn't binge watch it. You had to wait, So I could give you one anecdote though that I think is like the most important thing to me that I took away from Lost was,
sure,
because of the people of Hawaii who were like super, like welcoming and super grateful that we were there and like really helpful. They gave, I think it was season 2, it might have been season 3, I can't remember. I think I only did 1 and 2, so it probably was season 2. We screened this, the season premiere before it aired for the locals, right? And we did it on the beach on this like big screen in Waikiki, and there were like, I don't know, I want to say 2,000 or 3,000 people there, and it was it was pouring rain. I mean, it was like a Ridley Scott fucking movie. It was pouring rain, and every single person in that audience just stayed there and watched it in the rain, man.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was, I can't even describe, like, I get chills when I think about it. It was like, I was like, I had a seat like near the front or whatever, and I was like, fuck this. I got out and I walked, and I just walked up and down the sidelines and just looked at the people, and was just like, oh my God, these people are sitting in the rain to watch a television show. And it was so beautiful, man. So that's one of my strongest moments of that series.
That's cool.
Dude, it was such a blast to work on that show. It was, Jack Bender, again, he's like, I haven't seen him in a couple of years probably, but we were great friends and are great friends. And he is a great director and a great collaborator. And there was our AP, like we alternated DPs and assistant directors. So I had Richard Schro, who was my AD. So, Jack and Schro and I were like super tight, and we just, I can't even describe, like, you want to talk craft or story or whatever, but to me it was a lifestyle. Like, we were doing this thing, and you know, Jack and I would be, we were shooting in the convention center, which was supposed to be the airport, right? And there were, 200 extras, and they're all in line doing this shit, and Jack and I were spitting water on each other at the market, like, just, oh yeah, So, that's, I mean, it was just a real lovely set. Like, it was a very, very happy set. It was a great vibe.
Yeah. So let me ask you my last question, which is, what are you working on now?
I'm doing a show called Hap and Leonard, which is a buddy comedy set in the 90s. It's or set in the 80s, rather, late 80s, and it's on Netflix, and it's a really powerful show. It's about racism and friendship and all kinds of stuff. Like, we had, like, we did a scene the other day with Luke Gossett Jr. and Michael K. Williams.
Oh, Michael K. Williams is great. Sorry.
Dude, he is fucking insane, man. That guy's off the charts, man. He's so good.
And when does it come out? When can we watch it?
Well, the third season is what I'm working on. The first season is on Netflix. It's first on Netflix. So the second season is on. You can get it on iTunes or whatever. And the third season will be. I'm not sure when it airs on Sundance, but I think we should. It's only 6 episodes a season, so it's pretty short. So it'll be done. We're like halfway through now.
Well, Hap and Leonard, you had me at Michael K. Williams, so I'll have to check it out, and I would advise our listeners to check it out too.
Thanks so much for that, Sammy. As always, it is such a joy to hear from the people who helped make the show that has become such a joy to so many of us. That does bring this week's discussion to a close. Next time we are moving on to Exodus Part 1. We've almost made it to the end of Season 1. Can you believe it?
Next week and the week after, when we do Exodus Parts 2 and 3, we'll have 2 parts of an interview with the actor MC Gainey. He plays Tom Friendly. He makes his dramatic debut in the final moments of the finale, taking Walt from the raft, and he was a whole lot of fun to talk to. Really, it'll be a great interview to end the season on.
As always, we love to hear from you. You can call us and leave us your hot take on anything we've discussed on next week's episode, last week's episode, the episode of your choice. You can reach us at 9546-DHARMA, or if you're out of the country or for whatever reason don't want to make a phone call, you can record a voice memo on your phone and just send it as a message to our Facebook page, which you can find at facebook.com/thehatchpodcast.
Oh yes, please follow us on the social media, also Twitter at The Hatch Podcast. We love to hear your comments.
Our theme music is by Andy G. Cohen. Our cover art is by Danny Roth.
And we'll see you next week.
Namaste.